Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the May 12th, 2014 edition of Intelligence Report with AVoiceForMen.com and ShrinkForMen.com. I, as usual, am Dean Esmay, Operations Manager and Managing Editor of A Voice for Men. With me, as is usual, the tempestuous Tararabumdie Palmatier.
Jesus.
How you doing, Dr. T?
Oh, I was better before that intro. It's great. You even rhymed. You got some alliteration and some rhyming going.
I'm getting there. And because he could not be with us today, and we don't like him anymore anyway because he has stinky feet and bad breath, Paul is not here. And instead, the amazing and fabulous and beautiful and lovely Tom Golden has chosen to join us today. Say hi to everybody, Tom.
Hello, everybody, and it's an honor to be here.
Tom is well known for the YouTube channel Men Are Good. He is the author of The Way Men Heal, and he also, of course, hangs out with Warren and that other weird guy on the Mainstream Media. So you check him out monthly, Mainstream Media Monthly. Okay, so this week we've got three stories we're going to talk about, and the best nagging woman I know. No, just kidding. But Tara, you have an interesting story this week regarding something that appeared in the Telegraph, a new study suggesting that nagging specifically can cost male lives. Now, it is very funny to, well, it's very tempting to put a funny spin on this. Oh, look, the poor guy with their henpecked husbands. But what does this really say?
Well, I think the study could have been titled "She's Literally Nagging Me to Death." What the study found is that men who are subjected to nagging, and the article put scare quotes around nagging, constant demands and worries from their partners are 2.5 times as likely to die within 10 years than those men with less stressful relationships. So I have several questions because I didn't see the original data, and the article only gave a surface description of it. But my first question is the language they're using in this study, terms like nagging, demanding, criticism, just seem like prettied up words for emotional and psychological abuse. And that it causes a significant amount of stress for men in those relationships. So it's not surprising that they have higher mortality rates. As most people know, stress, unmanageable, out of control stress, can lead to all sorts of secondary health conditions like heart disease, cancer, stroke, passive or active suicide, substance abuse, and what I'm glad they did this study because, first of all, not enough studies are done about men's health or men's mental health. But I would like to have seen them be a bit more brave and call nagging and the other behaviors they described what it is. These are forms of abuse. There was a doctor, I think it's Ricky Lund, who is quoted in the article as saying that one of the causes for the higher mortality rate in men is that men have fewer people in their social network than women who tend to share their problems and worries with people. So, if we're looking at this group of men who are in relationships with women who are nagging, demanding, putting their worries onto them, if we are going to call that a form of emotional abuse, and I am, I would also argue that another effect of being in an abusive relationship is that these men may have socially isolated themselves at the behest of their partners as well, which also sets them up for these issues. And I like how it's women are sharing their problems with their partner, when I think a better word would be dumping their problems onto their partner to carry for them, expecting them to fix their problems.
Well, I'm halfway on your side and halfway not on your side on one thing. you're right, it should be called emotional abuse. On the other hand, we've had, I don't know, years and years of, like, if you accuse a woman of being a nag or of henpecking her husband, that's considered sexist. Well, in point of fact, we have those words in the language for hundreds of years now because it's a behavior that everybody has recognized for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
So while I am going to agree with you that it is emotional abuse, it's probably good to start with noticing this is nothing new. Just
Mm-hmm.
like domestic violence against men by women is, in fact, nothing new. We've just forgotten. You see what I'm saying?
Or we ignore it, or we call it something else that doesn't sound as bad as abuse, like nagging.
Yeah. Or it might be just time to say, you know what, there is such a thing as a henpecked husband. It is not funny. And, I don't know. There is such a thing as a henpecked husband. There is such a thing as a fishwife, a shrew, a harpy. They're mean words, but they've been around for centuries for a reason, because they describe something real. Which is, once again, I always feel obligated, even though it's tiresome, to say, yes, of course, and there are asshole men, too. It's not what we're about here. We're talking about something that people don't like to talk about, which is asshole women.
Sure. But I think, there are lots of variables that could also be examined in relation to the study, or perhaps they did. As I said, I haven't read the original study itself. But if you're talking about men who get into these kinds of relationships with that kind of woman and stay in them, you also need to look at, well, what are the factors that keep them in this kind of relationship? Because a healthier person with healthier boundaries would not stay in a relationship where they were disrespected, demeaned, or henpecked.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Mr. Golden?
Oh, I was just thinking, I would guess that probably over 90% of relationships, the women nag the men. Now, you can't put a number on it and say it's this much or that much, but I think it's a very common kind of thing. Now, and in some cases, it's not that big a deal, but it's when it's repetitive, and it's when it's just water torture that it becomes really abusive. But I think this is a very common behavior, and you're right, Ian. This has been around for a very long time, and that's part of the problem, is that the reason it's been around for a long time is there is some evolutionary benefit of it. I mean, if you are the woman in the relationship, your job is to kind of get the provisions in, to get the guy to get things taken care of, to kind of what's it called, the quartermaster of the entire relationship. And so in some ways, it's her job, but in other ways, it's an aberration of that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, one of the dynamics I've observed, it's not very politically correct, but we always strive to be very politically correct, is that a common dynamic is that women complain and men act on those complaints.
Yes.
Seems to be very normal.
Yes.
So that I guess I would say with something like this, I'm quite certain they don't mean, honey, you said you'd take out the trash.
Or, honey, did you go get your yearly exam to make sure you're in good health?
Actually, that's not so bad.
Yeah, well, I've told you at least 3 times now, dear. All right, fine. That, I guess you could call that nagging, but I doubt if that's the kind of nagging they're talking about. They're almost certainly in this study, which I also didn't read, so that makes me look smart, but I read the Telegraph story. I'm pretty sure they're talking about the nonstop will not stop.
Repetitive.
The kind of nagging the kind of nagging that comes from, they may not even be mad about whatever they're complaining about. They're just mad, and they're pecking and pecking and pecking.
Yes.
And where even if they solve the problems, the nagging doesn't stop. It's, another one starts to mushroom.
And what this demands from men is to set boundaries and to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And what we find a lot of times in relationships is that men are having a hard time setting boundaries and saying no, for one reason or another. Look at Congress; they can't say no. Women, feminists keep asking and asking. They keep saying yes, 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 yes.
They have the same problem with corporations.
What's
that they have the same problem with corporations.
Yes.
But it was interesting in the article, a couple of the researchers who are quoted, they said that men who have the nagging, demanding, dumping their worries on their husband partners, that the higher mortality rate can be mitigated if they're employed, because they use work to get away from the nagging partner. So it's like, okay, you can either work yourself to death or be nagged to death.
As
opposed to, I don't know, something healthier. And then
setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah,
Setting
exactly.
healthy boundaries.
It actually reminds me of my relationship with my wife when we first got married. Actually, it wasn't when we first got married. It was within the first 5 years or so. And she would say, you know, have you done this? You do that? You did it over and over and over again, you know. So I said, wait a minute, time out. You know, enough is enough. So we developed a system where she wrote up the things that needed to be done and put them on the microwave. And after they were up on the microwave, she could no longer say anything about it. That was it. No more, have you done this? Will you do this? In fact, the timing, I could do it whenever I wanted to. But I knew that list was there, and I'd take care of the list. And that really helped us to keep me from being nagged to death. It was kind of my way to say no. And I think that that's something we need to help our young men learn how to do.
So I'm actually all for, and this is why I'm actually all for bringing back the word nagging and not making it a taboo word.
Right. Ban nagging.
Yeah, ban nagging. No, you're not. No, Sebastian. Now ban nagging, and ban. Yeah. Screw it. Bad behavior is bad behavior, but it's always in proportion, right? I mean, if you never complained, then that would be crazy, right? What would you be, a doormat?
Well, it was Carl Jung who said that no man can spend more than 30 seconds with a woman who is, and his word for something, but he meant nagging.
Well, why do you think he built the tower in his backyard, Tom? He had his wife and a couple of mistresses to get away from. He didn't just build a man cave. He built a turret.
This is not an uncommon problem.
Do you have, I know you have a Sigmund Freud action figure. Do you have a Carl Jung action figure?
Why, yes, I do, and sometimes they engage in hand-to-hand combat. It was really interesting when I had a Lara Croft Tomb Raider, except my dog ended up chewing her up. So the threesome had to come to an end.
Tara, I had to laugh when I saw that when you showed your action figure, because I have the same one. This guy, when he was terminated, he gave it to me. He said, "This is for you."
Two psychology nerds. I can't take it anymore. Next step, we bust out into Game of Thrones talk.
There you go.
Well, one more thing from the article. They said that one possible solution to helping men with this issue would be teaching conflict management to them, which begs the question, well, who are they going to teach conflict management to? The nag or the naggee?
Right.
And I don't think it's a conflict management issue. I think it's a boundaries issue, and telling men that they can say no. Yep. And it's healthy to say no, and it's healthy to set limits. And if she doesn't like it, maybe she needs to go.
Yeah. I know other guys who will say, "Look, honey, you can either tell me what I need to do or tell me when it needs to be done, but not both." You know? And that kind of short-circuits things a little bit, too.
I like that.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is not be too afraid to stand up for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and the other interesting thing from the study is that nagging women doesn't really seem to have any impact upon their health.
Really?
Which I could speculate on wildly, but
and why do you think
we don't have enough time for that.
Why do you think that is?
We have a few minutes. Why wouldn't it bother them? Well, number one, maybe that men are less inclined to nag, but I've met me some complaining, whiny men, so that can't be it. Well, that could be part of it. Maybe statistically, men are a little less likely, and women are a little more immune to it. I don't know.
I'm guessing that part of it has to do with women not feeling responsible to meet his needs. whereas men do feel responsible to meet hers.
That's right.
Ooh.
I think that's a very good point. In fact, one of the notes I wrote to myself, questions to ask of this, or studies that arise, or studies, questions that arise from reading this study or this article about this study, which is, do some men take women's criticisms more to heart? Do men take women's needs more to heart than women take men's criticisms or men's emotional or physical needs?
Yeah.
I would bet you're onto something there. I know that I spent a very great deal of my childhood and early adulthood very anxious about what women thought about me, and I mean women in the aggregate, not the sexual dynamic. I just meant in general.
Yes.
Well, you know, a lot of work, and I'm sure it's probably the same for you, Tom, particularly with men who have replicated these relationships because they came from a family of origin where mom was like this, is that they grew up believing that if mom wasn't happy or if mom was raging or lashing out, it was because they were unlovable or they were bad, not, you know, mom's an alcoholic, or mom's a product of her own abusive family, or mom has a personality disorder and she feels like it's her God-given right to hurt the people who are closest to her.
Yes.
And so they internalize that if mom is hurting them and abusing them, that it's their fault and they deserve it. And if they can just be good enough and attend to all of her needs, and this is what parentification of a child is, that they can make mom happy and avoid her disapproval or her out and out abuse, and they carry that same belief system into their adult relationships, and it's every bit as faulty as when they were children.
But there are very good reasons why they felt that way when they were little kids. I'm sure you know, Tara, that one of the biggest reasons is because it's safer for the kid to think it's his fault. Yep. To think he's living in a chaotic environment.
Well, that's right. It's
because mom's an asshole. You know, he can't do anything about it, but he can.
One of the things that the word hyper agency just hit me too. This is an unhealthy tendency in men. Sometimes we talk about hypo agency, and you know, it's Warren's old phrase. A man's weakness is his illusion of strength, and a woman's strength is her illusion of weakness.
Right.
Men like to take responsibility for things, including things they have no control over whatsoever.
That's right.
That puts them higher up in the hierarchy if they're responsible.
Yeah.
Also, it's a defense, just like Tom mentioned, and some magical thinking. Because when you're a little kid, you're totally powerless and utterly dependent on the grown-ups who are supposed to be taking care of you. And if dad or mom are out of control, abusive, or downright monstrous, that's a terrifying thought for a child. Like, you're this little kid, and it's like, oh fuck, the grown-ups are assholes. What am I gonna do? And so it's safer. It's a psychological defense to believe that they have that their behavior can affect mom or dad, and in some ways it can, right? Because there are known triggers that the child can learn to avoid.
Right.
But there is a magical belief system that if I get good enough grades, if I take care of my bedroom and clean up, if I, you know, whatever it is. They believe that they can avoid the sour cycles, the abuse.
Now, it's interesting, and I guess we could spend the whole hour on this. We probably want to move on, but Erin Pitsey has mentioned to me that in all of her years, she's dealt with people in abusive relationships for 40 years, and she's still doing it. People aren't aware that she is not retired. She's still doing it. And she said in all that time, she has seen that boys tend to have a harder time recovering from abusive backgrounds than girls do. She says she's seen it time and time again, and I don't know exactly why that is, but it's interesting to speculate, I guess.
Yeah, what's your speculation?
I think that boys have a harder time actually even seeing their mothers as abusive than girls do, and whether it's in nature or nurture, they they inculcate a feeling that they are powerful and in control. So when they fail at controlling the situation they can't control, they take it harder. If that make any sense.
I hear you. I would add another factor, and that is that men's pain is taboo. He's got no place to take it. He's got no place to go. Her pain is a call to action. When she says, "Oh, mommy was so terrible to me," everyone goes, "Oh, poor thing." If he says, "Mommy was terrible to me," people are more likely going to ignore him.
What'd you do to her?
Yeah, really, what'd you do to her? It's like
we don't want to minimize it. We don't want to minimize it. I mean, in Erin's own case, her mother used to beat the living crap out of her with a power cord in the shower and stuff like that, and it was tough for her. But
yeah.
Speaking of odd forms of, I don't even know what to make of this. I don't even know how to. I can't even think of an easy way to transition to this story, but it's the one that I picked out. There's been a great deal in the news lately about a group, basically a group of terrorists in Nigeria, Islamic militants. What are the name they're calling this group? Boko Haram. Boko Haram.
Yeah.
The Boko Haram incident is what they're calling, what the terrorist group calls itself, and it's been making international headlines that this Boko Haram group kidnapped over 100 schoolgirls and is holding them hostage. And the President of the United States has made statements. The First Lady has come out and made statements. Governments around the world, because they ran into this school and kidnapped these girls. And what's so fascinating to me about these stories is everyone, if you look close enough, you find out, yes, they kidnapped the girls and they murdered every single one of the boys. And I kid you not, the fact that they did that is usually 4 or 5 paragraphs in. Most of them had their throats cut or got. A lot of them were burned alive as they boarded up the schools. They got the girls out of there. They boarded the school up. They set it on fire and then killed any boys who tried to get out to escape the flames.
That was the February story, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
The bottom line is these terrorists who are kidnapping these girls are in the habit of killing any boys present.
Yes.
Usually in horrible, gruesome ways. In some cases, they haven't even captured the girls. They've just shooed the girls away and told them, never come back here to this school again. You shouldn't be here, and still killed all the boys.
Yeah.
Now, to their credit, Mediaite mentioned it. Noah Rothman mentioned it in his column that there's this double standard, but most sources haven't. In fact, the one that really got my attention was the Associated Press. Associated Press, big headline, dozens killed in attack on Nigerian schools. You're reading. Let me just read the first paragraph, because this is how news is written, too. Sometimes people only read the first paragraph. Islamic militants set fire to a locked dormitory at a school in northern Nigeria, then shot and slit the throats of students who tried to escape through windows during a pre-dawn attack. At least 58 students were killed, including many who were burned alive. They slaughtered them like sheep with machetes and gunned down those who ran away, said one teacher. They go on, it's a government school. Now we get 4 paragraphs into it, and it says female students were spared in the attack, though girls and women have been abducted in the past by militants. So students were killed, people. Don't you understand? It was students.
Genderless.
Who were killed this way.
Genderless, sexless, neuter students.
These students were murdered, burned to death, burned alive, shot, throats cut.
But girls
were kidnapped. Somebody say something about this.
Yeah, it's just the double
I can't
standard.
even believe this is all biology. You can't make me believe this is all biology. I mean, you can make me believe some of this is biology. You can't make me believe the whole thing's biology. What is wrong with the news media?
The same thing that's wrong with Congress. The Same thing.
How much time have you got?
Yeah, really. And that's the problem, is that men and boys are seen as insignificant, and girls are seen as a call to action. We got to do something about these kidnappings. We must do something now. You know, I thought it was two separate incidents. I thought the one with the kidnapping was recent, and the one with the school burning was back in February. And the important piece was that the one in February got no coverage. The boys were killed and murdered and burned alive.
Maybe I need to go back and look at it, but I believe those 200 girls that were kidnapped, there were boys among them, and the boys got killed.
Is that right?
Maybe it is two stories, but I don't think so.
It may be two stories, but the same thing, because they did let the girls go in that first one. Maybe the same thing happened.
Yeah, they let the girls go when they murdered the boys. The bottom line is they've been kidnapping women and murdering boys. And it just...
They didn't cover it until they kidnapped girls. When they let the girls go, they didn't touch it.
Yep, and they got photos up there of girls holding signs saying, "What if it was your daughter? Why don't you care?" Well, I would care a great deal. Don't get me wrong, but I see that our friend Crystal Garcia is in the comments. Good to see you, Crystal. I can't figure out how to bring her up here. Well, she's speaking Spanish anyway. I was talking to her about this, and she said she actually had an encounter with some Facebook feminists, and she was talking about the situation in Africa, and a feminist actually said to her, "I don't see why I would care about the plight of African men." Okay. I mean, she really said that. And it's like, okay, all right, this is what that mentality is all about.
Yes.
They're just little black kids. They're just little black people. Black men aren't human. I think that's the take-home message. Black men aren't human. I think if we can all just agree on that, then that of course explains why this story is reported the way it is, right? Yes, I'm being sarcastic. Someone will quote that out of context, I'm sure. What does it take?
Only seem to care about little black boys as long as they get to circumcise them. I think once they rip their foreskins from them to make face cream,
often
I guess after that they have no value.
In that part of Africa, you're frequently talking about teenage boys who are forced into circumcision. Thank you. I mean, yeah, we're not even talking about infants there.
And adult men.
Huh?
And adult men.
And adult men, yeah. Forcibly held down, grabbed, and forcibly generally mutilated. But all we care about is girls in Africa. Of course, I don't want to see any girls kidnapped or beat or anything like that. It's just...
Well, you know what? Kidnapped and beat, you still have a pulse. You're not dead. Or raped, for that matter. And I will say this, and please feel free to quote me out of context. Murder is worse than rape.
Murder is worse than rape? How could you say such a thing?
Because I can get therapy to overcome and heal from a rape. Murder...
Yeah.
Nope.
Unless St. Peter's has a practice up in heaven or wherever I'm going to go, you know, death is terminal.
It says that rape is not as horrendous a crime as murder.
I don't know how often I've heard people actually say rape is worse than murder, and I'm like, do you have any idea what you're really saying there? Do you have any idea what you're saying to any victim of sexual trauma?
And I'm not minimizing the trauma of it, but like I said, you can get help, you can recover, you can have a life.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wasn't clear. I've had people say to me, rape is worse than murder, and I ask them, do you realize what you're saying? I mean, so the rape victim, basically, they might as well die. Their life is over. That's what you're saying if you're saying this rape is worse than murder bullshit. No, it isn't. You can recover. You can go on to lead a great life if you've been raped. You don't get to keep going to do anything after being murdered. So here I am.
Or you could make a career out of giving speeches at feminist lectures about it.
Right. In fact, I'm going to say it right now. If I have to volunteer to be raped or to be burned to death, I'll take rape.
Yeah, I'm up for that myself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Please. Yeah.
Bring it on. If that's the choice.
It's not exactly a question, but James Healy says, the British Secretary, something should be done about the girls or it would set a precedent. One has already been set. No kidding. the precedent is they'll get more upset if you go after girls. Oh, ranty ravey. Can we please start seeing boys as human? That would be my general request to the media and to society as general. Yes, even little black boys in Africa are human too. Who knew? That's my snarkiness.
I mean, do you think it's deliberate that they omit masculine pronouns, students, children? I mean, do they not think that people will have sympathy for murdered boys, or is it the fear that people will have more sympathy for murdered boys than kidnapped girls?
I just don't know.
Or is it completely unconscious? I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's unconscious. I really do. And I think it boils down to what Warren says about the disposability issue, that people just unconsciously believe that men are disposable and are there to meet the needs of those around them. And it's just like tea and water. I mean, it's just soaked into the fabric of what we see every day, not just the media, not just Congress, but on the street, the water cooler, every place. I mean, this is the beast we're fighting, really. It's this beast of attitude that men are disposable.
Mm-hmm.
That they just don't matter.
Misandry isn't real. I'm sorry.
We have a different word other than misandry, because I like misandry as a word, but it doesn't really capture the entire consciousness that we're swimming in. You know, that's so
disposability. Yeah. Man Woman Myth, who's one of the best men's YouTubers around, he's not doing videos like he used to. He did a great video, which I will try and remember to go back into the notes and put in, called Men Don't Exist. He has a whole, 10 minutes of different news reports that are exactly like this.
Yes.
Part of it does come, I think, from the instinctive need to use gender-neutral pronouns. So we're supposed to say firefighter, not fireman. So even if 10 firemen are killed, we're supposed to say 10 firefighters were killed. 10 soldiers were killed, and we won't mention that they were all men unless one of them is female.
Yeah, if there's one female injury or fatality, then they make sure to say, and 3 women.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like men they become invisible. They are statistics, and
men's job is to protect women, and when they fail, that's news.
But I don't think, I know historically that's always been true, but I think we've got it amped up to several notches beyond what's culturally healthy now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just my opinion on that.
I agree, and it's crazy, and people don't even know they have this attitude. Mm-hmm. They're not even aware of it.
They're not even aware of it. It's not even conscious.
Yeah, it's right.
Part of what we're trying to do is get them more conscious about it.
Exactly right.
Okay, and speaking about just generally negative or unconscious attitude about men, Tom, you had an interesting story you wanted to bring to the party.
Yeah, one of my interests is male friendships, and when I was a little guy, I just loved my male friendships. We would do things together. We would act out. We would do all sorts of things, whether it was play games or get involved in fights or whatever. We were little guys having a good time. And then when I was in high school, I still had lots of good male friends. It was usually around activities that were mutual. Then when I was in college, I had a lot of guys that we'd go out and do things with. But after I got out of college, and then more importantly, after I got married, my male friendships went, and they just dried up.
Okay.
And I think if you read that story and you read about male friendships, you'll see that this is not an uncommon event for men, that their friendships die out. And, it reminds me of a couple I was seeing in therapy one time, and the woman was complaining. She said, "My God, he goes with his friends, and they go out to this hotel together, and they drink, and they come back to the room, and they chase each other around naked. Oh, my God, don't you think that's so immature?" And she looks at me. She says, "Don't you think that's so immature?" I said, "Sounds like fun." He was not happy.
And then you were fired.
What's that?
And then you were fired.
He did not come back very often. She came back a little bit, but yeah. Because this is what guys do when they get together. They have fun. And I was so happy to see this man and his friends doing things that were fun and enjoying themselves. And we've really got to help men get back to that. Because men know how to do this. We really do. I know how
Fart
to do it.
jokes are funny.
What's that?
Fart jokes are funny.
Not just fart jokes. Men are funny. Men
Too.
are hilarious. Men are creative, and they're extremely funny. My wife was saying the other day, she says, women are not so funny. She said, I depend on men for humor. I said, yeah, that's exactly right. You know, but anyway, the whole relationship thing to me is important because of our isolation now as men, and our isolation now as men's human rights activists, and our isolation because of divorce, the MGTOW movement. You know, men are now separated out from women, and we really need to focus on how can we be friends with each other, because it's a slippery slope. You know, when we think about friendship in males, one of the things that stops it up is this whole hierarchical piece. You know, the idea of men wanting to appear on top. That's why male friendships usually have to do with shoulder-to-shoulder action when we're on the same team. You know, when you're on the same team, then you're not competing against each other. You can do something shoulder to shoulder. So this, it's just a fascinating piece for me, the whole idea of men's friendships. But the article itself... What?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the article itself say?
The article is really quite good. I recommend everybody have a look at it. The guy did a good job in kind of looking at what is the sociological perspective on male friendships.
Okay, so this is from Men's Journal. It's called Men's Journal, the magazine, Do Men Suck at Friendship by Daniel Duane.
Yeah, he did a nice job. But
I don't think men suck at friendship. I think that men suck at preserving their friendships when, say, for instance, they have a nagging wife who only wants him hanging out with people she approves of,
exactly.
or people whom are part of her social group.
Yes. In fact, women are allowed to maintain their friendships, but women don't like men to maintain theirs. You know, it's an interesting dynamic.
No, especially their friends who remain single.
Yeah. But the guy that wrote the article, Dean, basically was saying the title is intentionally inflammatory. You know, I think if you read the article through, because what he talked about first is the sociological idea that they call it the male deficit model. Sociologists talk about the male deficit model. This was in the 80s and part of the 90s, I think. The male deficit model said men don't know how to relate. Men don't know how to be intimate. Men don't know how to talk about their feelings. All this stuff, you know, and men don't know. They literally called it the male deficit model. And of course, with this male deficit, men could never get close to each other. What a bunch of BS, eh? Well, luckily, in the 90s and late 90s comes along a new alternative to the male deficit model sociologists put out. It's called the, what's it called? The alternative model, which says that, well, maybe, you know, since men do activities together rather than talk a lot, maybe they get close through doing activities. Like, aha, they finally got it. Because let me tell you something. Two men can be in a fishing boat all day long, not say more than 10 words, they leave feeling close. They leave feeling like they have been intimate with another person. And that's a beautiful thing. I mean, who needs words to be intimate? You share the experience. You know, just a shared experience gives us that intimate connection. And men are very good at this. And, you know, for anyone to look down at men and to sort of stick up their nose at men for being quiet and being together and enjoying each other's company makes me literally nuts. Because this is really the essence of intimacy, you know, is being able to share someone's presence with us. You know, and that's what men do in relationship. That's what men do.
This goes back to what we talked about a few weeks ago on the Going Mental podcast where you joined Paul and I, which is okay. So men enjoy intimate relationships with other men, non-sexual intimate relationships, but they do so differently than women do. Just like women process their emotions in a different way than many men typically do, but it doesn't make the way men process their emotions or the way men achieve companionship, intimacy, bad or wrong. It's just different.
Yes. And the assumption prior to the 90s was because it's different from the way women do it, it's wrong. Literally. They felt like it was wrong. And the piece now they've started to see is that this connection through activity is intimacy. And now the next thing they have yet to find out is that men process their emotions through activity. And they don't need to talk about it. They do it through action, and they do it through being pulled into the future. And so male friendships are based on that. That's what male friendships are based on. So, you know, if you read the article, the guy talks about his own friendships and what happened with his best friend and the trials and tribulations they went through. But I think as men and as men's human rights activists, it's good for us to be thinking of male friendships and put that out there and try and encourage men to get together and to help them see the pitfalls and what keeps us apart, the kinds of things that have separated men over the years, and how we can do away with that in order to try and start to get closer. But we really need it. We need the support of other men now, you know. End rant.
Good rant.
Thanks.
Dean? Did we lose Dean?
Dean, are you with us? Or is that Paul? I put him to sleep.
We've lost Dean. Dean took your words to heart. He's out forming a basketball league right now.
He looks like, oh, there he goes. I imagine we'll see him back in just a second.
Yeah. No, I you know, when in working with my clients, that's one of the things I encourage them to do, especially after divorce. It's like, remember all those friends of yours your wife couldn't stand? Email them, Facebook them, call them. Oh, but I haven't talked to him in years. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Reach out to them. All that stuff, all those fun things you used to enjoy, like playing billiards, cycling, that you had to give up because you weren't paying enough attention to me. Pick those activities back up.
Yeah.
And if, you know, men who are still married and are going to stay in the marriage, this could be a boundary, a chance for you to exercise boundaries, that you are going to have friendships outside of the marriage, just like she does, and it's okay.
Yes.
And you know, even in good marriages, I have friends who are like, well, you know, my husband, when he gets together as friends, they don't really talk about anything. They just do their football fantasy league. I'm like, so what? That's what they enjoy doing.
There you go.
And frankly, I'm with the guys. I'd rather get together over an activity than just sit and bitch and bitch and bitch and gossip and bitch. And you know what? I feel more connected to my friends where we go out and do things together that aren't getting together just to talk, to complain, or update. I mean, and that's fine too, but I do think that sharing an activity, working on a project together, that can be incredibly bonding.
Yeah. You know, I'd love to see the shed movement move into the United States. You know, what they're doing in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So critical is to give men a space where they can do things together. You know,
Exactly.
some of those guys in Australia are what do you call it? They're bequeathing their tools and stuff to the shed. So the sheds are building up this wonderful base of tools so men can come and work on projects together. I mean, it's great stuff.
I think that's fantastic.
That.
His avatar's back. Dean, do you have your mic on mute?
I think he may be having a hard time getting in because he set up the hangout. You know, and he may not be able to come back in very easily.
Oh dear.
Are you looking at the comments at all, Karen?
No, I think the person who, I don't have control over that. I don't think I do.
I'm wondering if you may have.
Oh, I have a couple of them. Well, now all I see is something in Spanish and no habla. I think the person who schedules. Oh, there he is. He's back.
Oh, hey.
Where did you go, Dean?
There's a thunderstorm here, and I was knocked offline. I'm glad you guys kept going. What did I miss? Nothing good since I wasn't here, right?
Yeah, we forget.
You missed the most important, most substantive part of the conversation today, and we're not going to tell you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make my profound observation, which is I do think there's something weird has happened where we actually look down on male friendship in this culture.
Yes.
I don't think that's ever been, that's historically, I think that's a historical aberration. I think men have always had close, deep, lifelong friendships with each other, and now we treat that as something weird. We even make jokes about it.
When we treat male friendships as something weird, like, oh, boys are just being boys and they're so immature, they don't want to give up their male friendships. Yet in the same breath, we have studies like the one we discussed earlier that talks about, well, men don't have good social support networks, and that contributes to the higher mortality rate. It's like, so which is it? You shame men and make them believe that having friendships takes away from a primary relationship with a woman in their lives, and yet then we say, well, they have all of these problems because they don't have good social support networks.
Right, and we make jokes about, we titter about male bonding, and we titter about so-called bromance, and really it's like there's literature going back literally thousands of years. I once wrote an article about this called Agape, the Forgotten Love of Men. And I mean, you can find stuff written literally thousands of years ago about men arguing amongst themselves whether it's, friendships with women are really as important as their friendships with their male friends, and quite often agreeing that their male friendships were more important to them.
Yes.
Not always agree on 100% agreement.
The classical bros before hoes theory.
Dude, I suppose one that was written in 150 A.D. by a Roman, talking to three of his buddies, one of whom happened to, by the way, to prefer men sexually, and the other was like, well, that's gross, but still, like, you and I are like the best friends in the world. So,
yes.
It almost matched to some of the culture war stuff we see now. This, it's like talking to one of his best friends. Ew, you have sex with guys? But no, but you're still one of the, I love you to death. You're one of the best people in the world to me. We look down on it now. In fact, I have a theory, my big cultural theory. The brony phenomenon of guys who like My Little Pony. Underlying that is the fact that if you look at My Little Pony, I'm not a brony, but I've seen the show. The whole show centers on the concept of friendship and why it's vitally important. That is what that little show is about. In fact, it's called My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. I watched it for a while. I've seen the first 2 seasons because my 15-year-old was into it. He's 16 and he's not as into it anymore. So I was curious. Every single episode, and I'm being pretty sure without fail, all of them are about how important friendships are, and when there's a solution or there's a crisis, the solution is usually to call upon your friends who will help you solve the crisis. And if somebody makes a mistake, it's usually because they let down their friends. The whole show is about friendship. And here we have a whole generation of young men who are absolutely obsessed with this show. Do you think there's a connection there? I think there probably is. Yeah. I think it's a big part of the brony phenomenon that not enough people have remarked upon.
I am not familiar with the brony phenomenon. Is this the show My Little Pony?
Yes, My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. Actually, there's been at least one documentary on it. A show is targeted at girls, young girls, from My Little Pony. It is very beautifully animated. It is very well written, and it's all about these magic ponies. But it's called My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, and it has a huge male fan following.
That's great.
Yes, it actually is kind of cool, and they get made fun of and they get picked on a lot. But their usual answer is, well, I can love and tolerate your disapproval. I don't care. I like my ponies. We don't care. One of their phrases is, I'm gonna tolerate and love the shit out of you, whether you like it or not. And it's very funny. Okay, now I'll have to send a link to you, Tara, and I'll have to put a link in the low bar that explains the whole brony phenomenon. We're talking like millions, like conventions. And the creators of the show were like, you're kidding. We have 15 to 25-year-old male fans, and they actually may outnumber our target audience. Okay, well, this is cool. We're going to roll with it. And they've been very friendly with the Brony community.
I think that's fantastic. That's great.
Rocket. I've never heard of them before either.
Really? Oh, wow. So, okay, at this moment, I am the biggest nerd in the room, but I do not have a Sigmund Freud action figure. So
that could happen, Dean.
I was going to say.
Phenomenon is real, and I'm convinced a big part of it is because our culture has lost its understanding of what male friendship is. And these boys, these young men, are recapturing something through My Little Pony.
I think you're right, and it's interesting. I don't know if either of you watched. There's an HBO series on this fall, True Detective, with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson, which I thought was incredible. But the thing I liked most about it, forget the mystery plot line, the action scenes, etc. It was, I think, at heart, a story about this friendship, this relationship between these two men. And I thought it was fantastic. And I was reading there was a feminist review of it in the New Yorker. Oh. And she was complaining about how the female characters in the show were two-dimensional and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know what? F this. 95% of programming on TV is for women. So, you know what? There's one show, a handful of shows that focus on male relationships, and I thought it was I thought it was fantastic, and it was incredible to watch, and I highly recommend it. And there's another program as well. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Wilfred.
That's
on FX with the comedian in the dog suit and Elijah Wood.
Yeah.
It can get a little.
A little? Yeah, it's very funny.
It's incredibly funny. It's incredibly dark. But again, at the heart of it is this relationship, and I think the character of Wilfred, if you can suspend belief for a minute and believe that this dog can actually talk and smoke pot and drink and party, it's he's teaching Elijah Wood's character in some very unconventional ways about his humanness, being a man, and friendships and relationships, and each show is its own little meditation on this, and I think it's great, and I wish there were more shows like this.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a huge untapped audience, that's for sure. Listen, we're going 53 minutes, partly late because of me. Sorry about getting dropped out that way. Let's say a couple quick things. You're both going to be at the conference in Detroit, right? The first International Men's Issues Conference. You're both going to be there?
As far as I know.
Yep, tickets are still on sale. They are selling like hotcakes. There was some kind of rumor floating around that we were somehow not going to sell enough tickets. No, we've already sold enough tickets. This thing is going forward. In fact, you want to get your tickets purchased because at the current rate they're going at, we may sell out before the conference date, which would be pretty extraordinary and pretty neat, but there's a very good chance it's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm under instructions from Paul Elam to find a feminist this week to invite. These are all serious, by the way. They are dead serious. I mean, Amanda Marcotte has been offered. I believe Rebecca Watson has been offered. Big Red has been offered. Big Red actually responded and said no, so that's nice. This week, I think I am going to invite, you know what? Here's a curveball. A well-known radfem on Tumblr and Twitter and other places called Nocturnus Libertas. Nocturnus Libertas, you make your way to Detroit, and we'll get you in that conference for free. Free ticket waiting for you. This is a dead serious offer. I doubt if she'll take me up on it, but you never know. For a radfem, she's less crazy than some. We're laughing, but we are serious. It would be cool. Maybe it would be a learning experience for you. Actually, I think it would be a learning experience for any of these ladies, and that's the thing. I think most of them are afraid to have a learning experience. Most of them. And is there any other business we need to get out? Let's see. We're probably not going mental this week. Maybe next week. Oh, but I understand Judgy Bitch may be interviewing somebody named Tom Golden this week. I've heard that rumor. Is that rumor?
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, excellent. So, all right, anybody have any closing thoughts?
No. Thank you for joining us, Tom.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Will you be joining us next Monday as well?
I hope so.
Okay, great.
Will be Paul, but Paul will be back within 2 weeks. So there will. So we wish him well and hope he gets better soon. He can never get better, really, because he's Paul. So there's only so far he can go, right? All right. So if you are in an abusive relationship or think you might be with with a woman, please seek the services of Dr. Shakara Palmatier at Shrink for Men. That's shrink the number 4 men.com. There's free articles, there's forums, and there's direct one-on-one consulting. She's got a phenomenal success rate at helping men through this craziness. If you're interested in, I don't actually know if you do online therapy work or not.
Yes.
Okay, and so where would people go if they're seeking your services online?
They could go to tgolden.com or to Men Are Good.
menaregood.com or tgolden.com. Check out Tom. He knows just a little bit about helping men, not just in abusive relationships, but in general, healing from traumatic experiences, the death of a loved one, all those horrible things. He's actually a real good guy to talk to. I've had the pleasure of talking to him about many of these issues. He understands men and their emotions better than most people I've ever met, present company excluded. Otherwise, if you're interested in men's issues in general, see you at the conference in Detroit or see you on the front page of avoiceformen.com. Bye-bye now.